Thank you for watching this presentation for our paper titled "We Need a Woman in Music, Exploring Wikipedia's Values on Article Priority." Now, this is a fairly lengthy work. We're not going to be able to get to everything in 8 minutes. So I really want to leave you with two main takeaways, both having to do with task routing, which is just the problem of routing tasks to human experts who can complete them. The first is that task routing is a multi-stakeholder recommendation problem, emphasis on the multi-stakeholder. And really, this is something that we have to make sure we keep in mind when we are designing, implementing, deploying these kinds of systems. And the second, which builds on the first in ways that I hope will become apparent to you as we go through the presentation, is that task routing recommenders on Wikipedia should incorporate the composition of existing content. And I'll go into a lot more detail about what this means. A great place for us to start with these things is with the motivation for our work. If you've ever been on Wikipedia's main page, you've probably come across some version of this message. It says, "Welcome to Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia that anyone can edit, 6.4 million articles in English." It's unsurprising with 6.4 million articles that editors often find themselves in this situation of asking, what should I edit? Where should I start? And this is really a guiding question for our work, or rather helping editors answer this question is a guiding question for our work. If you think about this, it's kind of a classic recommender systems problem. You have a bunch of items, in this case, 6.4 million of them, and you have a collection of users, in this case, Wikipedia editors, and you can use information about those users, like edit history, to figure out, what are the most relevant of these items to each user. What would they be interested in editing based on what they've edited in the past, for example. And sure enough, there have been recommender systems deployed in prior work that have done just that with a lot of success. And what we want to do, and what we did, is really build on some of that prior work in a direction that we think is positive. And the way we build on this is if you think about the formulation that I just gave of the problem, it focused a lot on the editor as the unit that we're trying to optimize for. We ask questions like, what does the editor want? What does the editor like to edit? What are the most relevant items for the editor? And we kind of just stop there. Now, those are important things to think about, obviously, but there are also other stakeholders that we need to make sure we're taking into account. Readers, for example, the kinds of content that we lead editors towards or guide editors towards is going to affect what content is available for readers to consume on Wikipedia. Now, there's another really interesting stakeholder, which is the encyclopedia itself. So if we think about it, Wikipedia as a community, as a platform, as a collection of editors, has its own values, its own goals, interests that are distinct from those of any individual editor. And you can see this come out in a lot of the norms that Wikipedians appeal to and hold each other to. There are other stakeholders, but rather than get into them, I just want to leave you with this takeaway again of task routing is a multi-stakeholder recommendation problem, and Wikipedia isn't an exception to this. And we need to make sure that we focus on more than one stakeholder when we're designing task routing systems. The stakeholder that we chose to focus on was the encyclopedia, because we found it to be the least well-studied and well understood in this context. And we did this through RQ1, which broadly speaking was, what are the encyclopedia's values for prioritizing articles? The way we got at this is by looking at a project called Vital Articles, where Wikipedians basically compiled lists of 50,000 highest priority articles for English Wikipedia. And the way they compiled these lists is through discussion and argument and manually, working together to build consensus and decide, what should be there and what should be removed. Through years-long process of iteration. And what's really great about this is that all of these discussions are publicly available on the platform. And so we decided to just qualitatively analyze them and figure out, what are the criteria that Wikipedians use to say, hey, this is really high priority for English Wikipedia to have at high quality. And conversely, like, this is very low priority for Wikipedia to have a high quality. What we came up with was this list of 8 criteria, which all of them are very interesting in isolation, but really what I want to focus on is the existence of global criteria. And I'll start with kind of what the takeaway is of global criteria, and then I'll get to what the criteria are. So the takeaway is just that, and this is rather intuitive, if you want to figure out how high priority a given article is, you can't just look at properties of that article itself. You also have to look at what the state of the encyclopedia is. So for example, what does the encyclopedia need? What is the encyclopedia missing? These are questions that have to factor into those kinds of decisions. And those are really captured in these 3 criteria of balance, non-redundancy, and completeness. And an example of balance that we found that came up again and again in these vital articles discussions was balance along gender dimensions. And that's something that, we definitely need to be careful to incorporate in task routing recommender systems, in guiding editors towards tasks that are going to be productive to forward the encyclopedia's values. And so if we look at examples of the gender composition of Wikipedia, we see that amongst highest quality featured articles, there's a huge disparity in biographies of men and biographies of women. And so the takeaway from this is that really we don't want to be designing recommender systems that are going to exacerbate this. Even if we have a situation where the biographies of men are just more relevant to each individual editor in the aggregate, we want to make sure that we are actually counteracting this trend and not exacerbating it. And that leads, again, to this high-level takeaway of task routing recommenders on Wikipedia should incorporate the composition of existing content. And we do a lot more exploration in the paper of this dimension and other dimensions of balance, non-redundancy, and completeness. So with that, if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I hope you will check out the paper, which builds a lot on some of the things that I discussed today and really adds a lot more interesting content and follow-up there. Thank you very much.